Hi, I thought we'd talk a little bit about paint today. If you've read any of the articles over at Go Make Something, you know that I use a lot of cheap acrylic paint in my work. So I thought I would show you how I store my paints and also talk a little bit about paint properties, since that seems to be confusing to some people. We're in my workroom, and to the right of my work table is this bank of drawers. And in this bottom drawer right here are my very cheap acrylic paints. You'll notice that the bottles are stored upside down. And I do this for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I really like to be able to see what color the paint is when I'm choosing it. And you'll notice that manufacturer labels aren't really representative of the color that's in the bottle. So in this bottle, the color looks quite a bit darker on the label than it does in the paint. So I flipped the bottles over so that I can ignore the manufacturer labels and choose my paint by what's actually in the bottle. The other reason that I store paint upside down like this is to remind me to shake the bottle before I use it. Now, the reason that you want to shake paint bottles before you use them is that paint, especially really cheap paint, tends to separate into its two layers. And the two layers of paint are pigment, which is the colored part, and binder, which is what holds the color to the surface when you apply it. I'm sure that you've seen in stores bottles of paint that look like they've separated into two distinct layers. There'll be a colored layer on the bottom, and then up above it there's sort of this ambery, gross looking stuff. That's the binder, and it is sort of gross when you see it all alone. If you see that, and that bottle is the only bottle of paint that you can buy, give it a good shake and make sure that the paint blends together and that it stays blended. Like, walk around the store for a couple minutes and make sure that the paint doesn't immediately separate into the two layers. Because what happens is, if paint gets really old, the pigment will settle and the binder will rise to the top, and the pigment will start to harden. And once it starts to get a little hard, it's harder for the binder to blend with it. And so it really changes the properties of the paint, and you really don't want that, especially when you're dealing with cheap stuff. You really want to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your 44 cents. So I usually buy the little bottles. I made the huge mistake of buying black and white in big bottles. I finally used up the black, but I haven't quite used up the white. I really don't recommend buying large bottles of any paint unless you're painting murals. And the reason for that is, especially in the case of acrylics, they tend to start to solidify in their bottles, and especially with these large bottles, periodically I'll flip a large bottle over and squeeze it, and what comes out is sort of a wet, gooey layer of plastic rather than nice, soft, fluidy paint. I really don't want to see the acrylic snot coming out of the bottle. I just don't like that. So get small bottles. They're cheap. And if they start to solidify before you use it up, it's not really painful to toss away a 44-cent bottle. I think that's all I have to say about paint right now. I'll be back later with some more videos on other stuff in my workroom.